Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. The Colorado Sun newspaper says that due to climate change, the Marshall Fire, which occurred this week, is Colorado's new reality. And they also say that Boulder didn't used to get high winds like that during December. Had they done any actual research, they would have known that December and January are the windiest months in Boulder, Colorado. Boulder averages more than one 70-mile-per-hour wind event every December. During December 1977, Boulder had 7 days when the wind reached 70 miles per hour. And on December 4th, 1978, Boulder had a wind gust of 150 miles per hour. Later that month, on December 23rd and 24th, Boulder had wind gusts all day getting up to 90 miles per hour. Those winds must have been caused by global cooling. That same year, the New York Times reported, "International team of specialists finds no end in sight to 30-year cooling trend in Northern Hemisphere." Now let's look again at what actually happened in Louisville, Colorado last week. I used to ride my bicycle every day through this neighborhood on my way to work, so I'm very familiar with it. This is a Google Maps image of what the neighborhood looked like before the fire. There were very large, flammable structures located just a few feet apart. When this house started on fire, with the high west to east winds that were occurring, this house never had a chance. The way the neighborhood was built guaranteed that pretty much all of the houses were going to be destroyed in a fire. One house in the neighborhood survived. Let's take a closer look at that house. That house is located on a street corner, so it had fire breaks on both the south side and its west side. The reason this house didn't burn is because there were no houses within 100 feet on its west side. But it's much easier for the newspaper to blame climate change than it is for them to blame bad neighborhood design and bad governance. A week earlier, the Denver Post wrote this article about the fires which occurred in Colorado during the autumn of 2020. They said the Cameron Peak and East Troublesome fires were the largest in Colorado history and blamed them on Joe Manchin for not supporting Biden's $2.2 trillion climate bill. The State of Colorado website also claims that those were the two largest fires in Colorado's history. Here's a map showing the burn area from those two fires in October 2020. Now let's take a look at a map of the burn area from the fires in 1898. Colorado has been a state since 1876, and the 1898 fires were much larger than the ones in 2020. Here's some articles about the fires from 1898. Denver, Colorado. Reports from the western slope of Colorado continue to tell the ravages of the forest fires which bid fair to devastate the greater part of the forests of the state. The Fort Collins paper reported that the fires were in all parts of Colorado. The forest fire on White River has burned over an area of 100 square miles and is still sweeping eastward in a stretch 10 miles wide. The Leadville newspaper reported forest fires of unparalleled range and damage, towns threatened with destruction. The New York Times reported forest fires in Colorado, people in northwest part of the state said to be fleeing for their lives, loss will be enormous. The forest fires burning on the west side of the divide are beyond control, and people are said to be fleeing for their lives. The fires, which are reported, cover most of the northwest part of the state and extend through the counties of Routt, Rio Blanco, Grand, Larimer, Garfield, Eagle, Pitkin, and Summit. The 1898 fires were much larger than the 2020 fires, and it's no surprise that people who generate this propaganda for the state government aren't actually familiar with the state's history. This is the real problem which the forests of northern Colorado and southern Wyoming have. A century of fire suppression combined with beetle kill from 10 years ago has left huge amounts of fuel on the ground. It's the same problem which they had in Louisville. There's huge amounts of fuel which can be easily ignited and start a very large fire. Before the days of man-made fire suppression, fires were much more extensive in the western United States. The New York Times wrote this article 30 years ago, back when they were still a semi-legitimate source of news. Thomas Swetnam and co-workers have discovered that major conflagrations sweeping across many mountain ranges in California and the Southwest were long a common feature, occurring at least twice a decade and apparently linked to oceanic currents much further south. The so-called La Niña events that often result in droughts. Finding this synchronicity in fire events was a big surprise to us, he said. It tells me that western landscapes in pre-settlement era were very smoky places. We've been having a La Nina for the last 2 years, so not surprisingly, we're also having fires. The problem now is that due to the foolishness of humans, we now have huge amounts of fuel on the ground, so the fires tend to get very large. The government could make a lot of money off this wood and prevent future fires by simply letting loggers in to clean up the mess. That would solve multiple problems, but would require some intelligence in government. Prior to the arrival of Europeans, Native Americans maintained the land primarily through the use of fire. They understood that a healthy environment required the regular occurrence of fires, something which we've stopped over the last century. The new reality for Colorado is that millions of clueless people have moved into the state. They believe that if they drive electric cars and shut down the energy supply which they need to survive, that will prevent Colorado from having the same weather which it's always had. Toto is very happy to have escaped the new reality of clueless progressives in Colorado. You can visit him, Kyrie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.